Everybody, I'm Ryan Lizzie with Tell Us News, and here is with me, as usual, every Monday at noon, starting a little late today. My fault, Steve. It's my good friend, Steve Schmidt. Steve, I understand you're actually in Washington. I didn't know that until a few minutes ago, but I did feel a disturbance in the force, and
Uh,
now I know what it is.
I am in Washington. And it was very strange getting in here last night, dystopian.
Why is that?
The roads, there were a lot of road closures because of all the cleanup from the military parade, and you saw all of that. I didn't get into about midnight, but I lived in Washington for many years, and over the course of those years, there were more and more motorcades, and you would see more and more police vehicles on the streets. And yesterday, around midnight, just the number of vehicles with lights on, up and down empty streets. It had a dystopian air to it. It did not feel like coming into the capital of the world's greatest democracy. Felt a real difference in the atmosphere. I suppose is the best way to see it. But anyway,
Yeah.
I'm here in the nation's capital, and last night, while I was sleeping, the President of the United States issued on Truth Social what is tantamount, I suppose, to a declaration of war against cities in America that are run through election outcomes by members of the Democratic Party. Donald Trump views big parts of the country as occupied enemy territory. He said that. His Homeland Security Secretary has said it. And from this city on the banks of the Potomac, obviously the orders are going out to do violence by the government in these places to Americans until they're brought to heel, until the people all love Trump enough, I suppose.
I think we should read what he wrote because it's, the bar is so low at this point, but it's just worth reading in full because it's one of the more shocking pronouncements to come from a president and even from Trump. He starts off with this: our nation's ICE officers have shown incredible strength, determination, and courage as they facilitate a very important mission, the largest mass deportation operation of illegal aliens in history. And then he goes on and on. But this is the paragraph that I think you're talking about that is really has a lot of people deeply concerned. In order to achieve this, we must expand efforts to detain and deport illegal aliens in America's largest cities, such as Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York, where millions upon millions of illegal aliens reside. These and other such cities are the core of the Democrat power center, obviously, big D Democrat, where they use illegal aliens to expand their voter base, cheat in elections, and grow the welfare state, robbing good-paying jobs and benefits from hardworking American citizens. These radical left Democrats are sick of mind, hate our country, and actually want to destroy our inner cities. And they're doing a good job of it. It goes on from there. It's um, like you said, it's basically a declaration of war by the president on the population centers of the country. And frankly, it didn't, it doesn't even make the front pages. This statement, and the backstory here, of course, is that he's pulled the plug on operations to essentially donors or people that have his ear. So the ag industry, the service industry, or at least hotels. Some people got to him, got to his ag secretary, and he, classic taco move. Trump backed down on some of the operations that ICE was performing in the agriculture sector and hotels. And then, of course, the right wing flipped out over that. The Stephen Miller MAGA base flipped out over that. And so I think we get this kind of, you know, uh, insane statement that, going after Democrats, going after blue cities to kind of balance everything out. But I do think what's behind it is a little bit of a retreat on his donors' use of undocumented workers. So he puts out this unhinged statement to create a big fight with the left and have everyone condemning him to keep the MAGA base together, right? Because it's all about hating the other side. So that's kind of my crude political analysis of it, Steve. That doesn't mean the statement itself is any less unhinged and disgusting and un-American and unlike anything we've seen from a president in our history.
I think it has to be coupled with what Kristi Noem said about Los Angeles, that we're here and we're here to stay until we liberate the city. And I think you have to take seriously the things that Stephen Miller has said. And so for the many years I was on MSNBC during the rise of Trump from 2015 through 2020, the decade, he came about 3 years into the, I guess, 8 or 9 years that I was a contributor there, and I would always be asked questions on the air about why do you think Trump said that? And I always thought it was a strange question because I don't know, maybe because he meant it. I'm not a
Yeah.
psychiatrist. I'm not a psychologist. I was a news analyst. I'm a political consultant. And so I've spent a lot of my career advising people how to run for office or how to deal with situations in the media, advising people this is what you should think about saying. And what I find most curious about this age is the unwillingness 10 years on to take him at face value with regard to the things he said. And so if I was in the White House briefing room today, I would want to read
You,
what Kristi Noem said. And then I would want to read what he said to Carolyn Levitt, child of the corn. And
which
what
Christy
I would
Noem
want,
statement? Which
what
which
I
Noem
would,
statement?
what I
Which
would
Noem
want
statement?
to was that
Which Christy Noem statement?
the statement about we're staying in LA all the way until the city's
Is
liberated.
liberated. Sorry, got it.
The question that I would want to ask is, do you mean this? And so if you take Trump at face value on the points about the blue cities, everything that he says in way of rhetoric about these are where the elections are stolen from and all of this, it's all a lie.
It's all false. It's all
Just like
insanely false.
just like the Hitlerian lie, and it's a Hitler level lie about the stolen election of 2020. He lost that election. He lost that election resoundingly. It was not stolen. The American people voted against him, and he incited an insurrection. And the fruits of all of that political violence are starting to come due now. And so you have this dialogue that takes place in the media then where I think a lot of people who have gone into journalism, and I think this is the Jake Tapper journalism model, for example, is that he thinks that he's some sort of cultural figure that adjudicates right and wrong in a broader sense, that sets the boundaries and the borderlines of what we're allowed to talk about and what we're seeing, even when, right, our own eyes and our intelligence tells us we're seeing quite the opposite. So what did we see? What did we see this weekend? We saw 12 million people, upwards of 12 million people protesting peacefully. And then you get to the end of the protest in Los Angeles, and there's skirmishing and there's violence on the streets. And I'm watching Casey Hunt on CNN talk about, well, this is a big problem for the protests and for the protest organizers because now there's violence associated with the protests. Well, let's put a full stop on a couple of things. There were three things that kind of happened. First thing that happened was Donald Trump sent the Marine Corps into Los Angeles, and he federalized the National Guard, and his Homeland Security Secretary dropped the mask and said, we're here to liberate this place for political reasons. This is the federal government coming to liberate California, as if it was the Union Army in 1868 in Mississippi trying to put down the KKK rebellion. So at any rate, there's that.
Yeah, and let me make a point about that. Finish up here. I want to make
When
a point
when
about.
you're when you do that, you're going to incite peaceful protests, but you're also going to incite a response. We live in the United States. So my question is, what the fuck do you think is going to happen when you send a brigade worth of combat soldiers into an American city? There's going to be some cohort of the population that responds to that in a way that is beyond the dimensions that are peaceful protest. Part of that may be driven by criminals, by gangs, by whatever, but part of it may be driven by people who were a lot like the Sons of Liberty in Boston in the 1770s while this was going on. And so it's a really extraordinary moment, and one that people better get their heads around, because if Donald Trump is going to keep escalating, then the situation will escalate. If you invade a free people with the power of the state in the United States of America, there will be violence.
And then you're absolutely right. I know this is a cliche at this point, but just imagine if this was another country and you were a foreign correspondent. People in the media should think this way. You were a foreign correspondent in a place where the president, against the will of the local elected leadership, sent in, first of all, took over their local militia unconstitutionally, according to at least one court, and then sent in the federal, the state troops, the federal troops in our example. And then he went and wrote that the people in these cities are sick of mind, hate our country, and actually want to destroy our inner cities. Um, what would you think? You would think that this guy is trying to start a war in places dominated by politically by the other party. um, you wouldn't think twice. I mean, that he's sending troops and then inciting. Uh, I don't want to say he's inciting violence because he's not saying go kill anyone, but he's saying that these people hate our country and want to destroy our inner cities. If you if you're
That's an
sending troops,
incitement. That is an incitement. That is an incitement to violence. And let
and
me
it
let
doesn't
me
make
just
the top
let
of
me
the crazy thing, Steve, is this barely. I mean, sometimes you feel crazy talking about this stuff because this barely makes the. I know we don't have front pages really that people care anymore, but this is not what everyone's talking about. I know there's a lot of shit going on, but this is and of course the context here is the weekend after there was actually political violence in America, where four people were shot and two of them were killed, obviously politically motivated, and where the president threw himself a birthday party disguised as a tribute to the army with a bunch of tanks in Washington D.C. So if this were happening in any other place, people would be a whole lot more freaked out than a lot of people are here.
Donald Trump has been inciting violence for 10 years. 10 years. When he stood up behind podiums and told the crowd to punch people, when he talked about violence in the streets, when he has asked his people, can I shoot protesters? Can I sink migrant votes? He has made hundreds of violent, inciting statements and incited an insurrection. He is the cause of the political violence that is escalating, and he is the president. So when you look at the George Floyd protests, and people say in the constant whataboutism, but there was violence, and there was. There were riots, and not for the first time in this country. There was social unrest. And the problem with the credibility of the media is you had millions of Americans looking at the flames in a city being told it was a peaceful protest by the same people who were shouting down anybody who said that Joe Biden wasn't up for another campaign against Donald Trump. So the media has over and over again told the American people that what they see is not real. Well, on the other hand, we have a fascist who has been telling the American people what they see is not real. And so, as the American people try to adjudicate this and figure it out, you have Donald Trump saying the election was stolen in a country that was founded in revolution. And what he's saying is if the election was stolen, is you live under an illegitimate presidency, under an occupation, that I'm here to liberate you. And so this is a singular act of evil in the history of the country. Donald Trump is one of 45 human beings who have sworn the 35 word oath that makes you president of the United States. He's the only one who has ever done the things that he's done. And I just want to say to you and to everyone who's with us, I was the first member of the Republican Party to congratulate Barack Obama and address him as Mr. President elect. When I was handed the phone, excuse me, before I handed the phone to John McCain to make the concession. And it was an honor to do so. The country is bigger than us. And the Republican Party is not sovereign. The Democratic Party is not sovereign. The people are sovereign. The people. And so the American people, I think we have 90,000 elected governments in this country. And Donald Trump presumes that he has the power to obliterate the choice that Americans have made. Californians have a right to elect Gavin Newsom. South Dakotans have a right to elect who they want. And what we're being subjected to is an acid bath being poured on our foundational values. And it's appalling.
Well, I can't disagree with any of that, Steve. All right. I want to ask about something that's a little bit more complicated, because this what we're talking about here is just as obvious as anything, and I don't understand why there's not more coverage of what the hell Trump is tweeting about this morning. But I want to talk about the politics a little bit of what's going on with Israel and Iran. This is something, I mean it by politics. I don't, I don't want to be too crude, but I think it is it's going to be interesting to see how both parties respond to this. Um, Trump, you know, there's no cohesion in the Republican Party these days ideologically, but there are people around him who are pretty steadfast isolationists, who don't um, who aren't interested in helping Israel, and there are just as many people around him who want us to be involved in a more serious way. And Trump's instincts so far, I mean, this besides getting rolled by Netanyahu, which was obvious, anyone could see that coming, and it's very easy to roll Trump. A world leader doesn't have to do much to accomplish that. So he got rolled by Netanyahu. He made this pathetic attempt at brokering a deal with Iran that obviously was never going to go anywhere because he doesn't know the sort of basics of what the hell's going on there. But now we're these two countries are at war. It's going to escalate. Civilians on both sides are going to increasingly be dead and on our TV screens. And there are going to be calls for the United States to do something. Now, um, I'm a sort of recovering humanitarian interventionist. I'm not I'm not very fond of the United States meddling militarily just about anywhere uh, 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 these days, with some very few exceptions. I was at the New Republic in the early 2000s that was supported invading Iraq. Um, and I had nothing to do with that editorial decision, but it really chastened me seeing up close some of the people around me who supported that war wholeheartedly. Um, just since then, I've been a lot more cautious. Steve, I don't know what your view is on this, but what should the Democrats be saying about this? And what do you think Trump's instincts are here?
We've been in a functional state of war in many ways against Iran since 1979. Uh, we have a very difficult relationship. There's a lot of American blood on Iranian hands, going back decades. And the fundamental proposition at hand is whether the Iranian regime can or cannot have nuclear weapons. And I am on the cannot side of that equation. And so all of the diplomacy, all of the work that has been aimed at preventing that, whatever your opinion on that may be, over the last decade, we are at this moment right now that you have described. And as you accurately said, Bibi Netanyahu is intellectually a lot smarter than Trump. He's more wily than Trump. And like all of these world leaders, what they all share in common is whether it's Macron, whether it's Xi Jinping, whether it's Putin, whether it's Carney, whether it's maybe everyone but Stormer. They all have the ability to run circles around Donald Trump and to manipulate him. I mean, what Xi Jinping understands
100%.
about Trump is that if he wants to get something from Trump, all he has to do is give him an extra piece of chocolate cake after the dinner, right? And he's gonna get what he wants. So the Israelis control Iranian airspace. The Israelis are trying to topple the Iranian regime. He's going for it. He's going for the head
You
of the
think,
snake.
yeah, that
And you see Iranian protests now, where people are chanting in the streets of Tehran, death to the Ayatollah. So here's the position that Bibi Netanyahu has put the American president of the United States in. Either the regime topples or the regime survives. If the regime survives, the lesson of the experience will be that we need to develop a nuclear weapon as quickly as possible so this can never happen again. That the idea of playing this game the way that we have has not worked out. And so the result of this will be that the Iranians will have survived the regime, and that the experience will have reinforced to them that they must have a nuclear weapon like North Korea. So, what that means is Israel has total domination over the skies of Iran, but lacks the heavy bombers and the munitions to be able to destroy the Iranian centrifuges buried deep under mountains. And there's only one military that has the warplanes and has the munitions that can essentially blow apart the mountain and destroy everything buried thousands of feet below it, and that's the United States. And so the
Which
position,
Netanyahu knew going into this.
right. And so the position that the United States has been put into, and what Donald Trump is not going to get out of after 20 years, is that it's going to be American B 2 stealth bombers that obliterate these mountains, whether we ever acknowledge it or not, and destroy the Iranian nuclear program. The idea that the United States will be engaged in a regime change, that will try to build an Iranian democracy, we're not signing up for that again in the United States. But
I hope
but
not, but
there's
I hear
there's
the same. I hear some
but
voices already calling for that, and
but
nobody
there's
wants
no
to
way
defend the Iranian regime.
but there's
Um,
no way out of but there's no way out of that, because while this moment did not have to start in this moment, it has started, and we cannot leave this Iranian nuclear program intact at any conceivable level now that it has started, because if any aspect of it is left intact, their incentive to get a nuclear weapon is so heightened that that is a direct threat to American national security.
I don't know, Steve. I intellectually I understand what you're saying and why we shouldn't tolerate the Iranians having nukes. Obviously, the lesson for Iran, the lesson for any country that's been thinking they need nukes, what they should take from the last 30 years is develop it as fast as you can before anyone catches on. But I don't think the American public is signing up for us using bunker busters to blow up mountains in Iran uh, without 100% certainty, because there can't be 100% certainty that that's going to destroy this program.
Sure. And
Um,
you have
and
and you have
we're
an
going to be that's what you're that's going to war with Iran, and um, w- you know, North Korea shouldn't have nuclear weapons. And a lot of presidents before North Korea had nuclear weapons said they cannot and will never have nuclear weapons. Um, for for better or worse, for worse, they now have them. And I don't really see going to war as a great option back before they have it. I don't think anyone thinks in hindsight, oh, we should have bombed the hell out of their nuclear program. So I don't know if I'm with you on that. I don't know if I'm with you on anything with the United States helping militarily in any way that gets us into a war with Iran. On this, to be quite honest, Trump's instincts of calling for peace are the best thing about the guy. He's not like the best thing about Trump, as much of a blithering idiot he is on the world stage, is that he really does not seem very interested in bombing other places. And I don't see why um, there a point could come in these military operations where Iran believes they do need a peaceful settlement and a much tougher inspections regime and deal than they would have accepted before this military these hostilities started, and that is a viable path. We don't do this
So,
militarily, but Iran suffers enough where they come back to the negotiating table and said, okay, to save the regime, we will fully renounce nuclear weapons, and we'll do the full inspection regime.
um, so, well, listen, everything that you said about, as a general proposition, this country sending its sons and daughters back into harm's way in the Middle East, I'm with you on. I get it. Let me further say, we better pray in the United States that we don't have a war with the fucking imbecile that we have running the Pentagon right now, and the people about it. So let me just add, you think about D-Day, and Donald
And who
Trump
ran
made a
that? Yeah.
speech after the military parade where he talked about the American army destroying America's enemies everywhere around the world. And if you take the plain words of that speech, that's as delusional as anything that he said in the last month, because that's certainly not the experience of the American military around the world in the last 50 years, some inconquerable force that goes around destroying our enemies. We have gotten into quagmire after quagmire after quagmire, and the American military has been poorly used all over the world. So
Including in Los Angeles.
I am with you. This country is divided. Uh, the president is a liar. He is not trusted. He does not have the moral authority to lead this nation in war. And so any
And
type
I'm
of
sorry.
military conflict
Yeah.
is a disaster of the highest magnitude. That being said,
And
you know,
Netanyahu is a liar too. I'm a staunch supporter of Israel, but Netanyahu is not someone to be trusted.
no,
And the way that he's playing Trump is frankly a little scary because Trump values this relationship. And the fact that he got into what he's calling a preemptive war, this wasn't a preemptive war. Iran was not on the verge of nuclear breakout. They were not on the verge of producing nuclear weapons. So I don't know, you would call it a preventive war, I guess. So there's a lot of bullshit going on from the Israeli side too. But he knew they couldn't destroy the program. So he knew that step one was do as much damage as they could. Um, and the campaign has been extraordinarily impressive. What they've done on the ground and decapitating some of this leadership is amazing. Um, but they knew they didn't have bunker busters to destroy this program, and that the next step was going to be pressure in the United States for us to get involved. And I don't like that. I don't like any country thinking they've got the United States in their back pocket to go to war with them when we don't want to go to war. And I agree with you about the nuclear program, but I don't.
well, you
I,
could see it. You could see this unspooling from 1,000 miles away. And so there's a mountain where all the reactors are in, and there's one country in the world that can blow the shit out of the mountain. And
yeah.
so,
And so yeah,
Gary Kasparov, right? His Substack is called Next Move, and the chess. You don't have to be a grand chess master to figure out what the next move is. Is that
and
Donald
yeah.
Trump is? I can see it right now, right?
And is this going to
You're
rupture
walking.
the Trump Netanyahu relationship? That's the question I have because Trump didn't want this. He developed this relationship with Netanyahu, similar to Elon Musk, similar to Putin, frankly, but and similar to what he thought he was doing with Xi. And at the end of the day, he has absolutely no leverage over these people. Maybe with Musk, he eventually had some leverage, but he has no leverage over Netanyahu. What was the point of giving Netanyahu everything he wanted for the last decade? And talking about Trump, when push comes to shove, the most important moment, they want to go to war with Iran. You don't want him to go, and he won't listen to you.
And so now you're going to say, well, this is it. There'll never be another moment where you can blow up the mountain, take it all out, right? They'll be back to square zero. There'll be no nuclear
Absolutely.
program for the next
And
for the next 80 years.
it's a good argument. You just made it.
Uh,
It's a good argument. I'm
there's
sympathetic. Yeah. I'm
right?
sympathetic to it.
The debate, we've been having this debate since Bill Clinton, George
But if
Bush,
you
Barack
and,
Obama,
but
Joe
nobody's
Biden.
people are going to say, "Oh, you could just push a button with the bunker buster, and the nuclear program's going to be over." We've got to do that. And I think you and I know that's just not true. It would have been done a long time ago if that were true. And so we're not going to solve this right now, Steve. But this is
No, but
a,
but but the but
a
the larger
scary
but
disaster.
but the larger point about it is that anybody who sat through the 2024 election. I mean, I've written about this and I said it is we're not going to have peace. What we're going to have was war and chaos. And
Absolutely,
170 days in or whatever it is, right? What we got is war and chaos. We have the world is spinning out of control. You have a million casualties in Ukraine, right? Of the Russian forces. You have this, and we got the dumbest son of a bitch in the history of the country sitting in the Oval Office who lectures other people about cards. He's the guy with no cards. We have no cards.
100%.
And
And you
so,
have the
and so he
three.
put us into a position with China, with the EU, across the world. Everybody understands Trump blusters, he backtracks. And in the end, you know, Bibi Netanyahu has an agenda. And his agenda is he wants to blow the shit out of the Iranian nuclear program. And it's been his life's work. And he's on the edge of achieving it because he has manipulated a dumb guy and twirled him around his finger. And so we're at a very, very, very dangerous point. And the dangerous point isn't us blowing up the mountain, right? That's the easy part. What we should have learned in the last 20 years is after we blow up the mountain, what comes next? And I guarantee
Exactly.
you,
Exactly.
Donald Trump has no answer, and neither does Little Marco, and neither does Pete Hegseth, and neither do any of the other disordered imbeciles around these people of what happens next. None.
Absolutely. And Trump's got the same relationship with three of the most powerful leaders in the world, all of who want to dominate their region and have in different ways expansionist plans. And that's Netanyahu, Putin, and Xi. And he thought by praising them and buttering them up, somehow he would have leverage over them. And that's just been absolutely wrong. Putin is doing what he wants in Ukraine without Trump saying a fucking word. Uh, Bibi is doing what he wants in the Middle East, despite Trump's views. And the next domino to fall is you've got Xi sitting there thinking, this might not be a bad time to start looking seriously about going and taking back Taiwan. And so, if you're a leader right now that with an aim that you previously worried America might put a stop to it, uh, Trump's your guy. So, all right, Steve, I know you got a 1 o'clock thing.
I do. I just want to say one last thing to the people over to be able to go is that I've told this story before, but I love it in that Franklin Roosevelt talking to the Canadian Prime Minister, and it's a great story because Trump's in Canada with the Canadian Prime Minister at the G7 meeting, but the Canadian Prime Minister during the Second World War was Mackenzie King. And Prime Minister King was a person who was very conscious of the fact that he was in the presence of a world historical figure, Franklin Roosevelt, and he took very copious notes whenever they were together. They were talking about the future, the world at peace in 1944. And Franklin Roosevelt sketched out the world we live in, the world that came to be. And he told Mackenzie King that nothing lasts forever. And it was his dream, it was his vision that the world he envisioned, the UN Declaration of Human Rights, the UN, all of those things, that it would preserve peace, create opportunity, and it did. But he said he hoped it would last for as long as everybody who was alive on the day the war was won was still alive. And here we are, 80 years on. And so America destabilized, destabilizes the world, and you're seeing the cost of that destabilization in the core with things spinning out of control everywhere. So it's a frightening time. and one that requires Americans to be engaged, to care about their country, and to remove these imbeciles from power.
Great way to end, Steve. And Steve, let's get a beer later.
Sure.
I'll text you offline. Thanks to everyone. We're here every Monday at noon. Me and Steve. If you don't already subscribe, please obviously subscribe to The Warning by Steve Schmidt, and please subscribe to me, Ryan Lizza, at telos.news. That's TELOS.news. Thank you, and we'll see you on Monday at noon. Take care.
Take care, everyone.